organization's objectives include maintaining international peace and security, protecting human rights and delivering humanitarian aid, promoting sustainable development, and upholding international law.
Welcome to Super Adaptables, a More Than Walking video podcast discussion.
Today's topic is A Land for You and Me.
Our disability community is filled with individuals who have adapted to obtain new abilities since their injuries occurred. Our disability is our greatest strength. It gives us a supervision to see the issues facing humanity from a more inclusive perspective and the grit to fight back against all odds.
Our goal for these conversations is to make us think critically and for us all to leave with a newfound sense of belonging in a world where we have more things in common than we do different.
I'm Corey Feasley, C4 complete quadriplegic since 2005.
And I'm Jonathan Sigworth, C7 complete quadriplegic since 2006, both of us hailing from the great state of Connecticut.
So in 1940, Woody Guthrie, an American folklore singer, wrote one of the most iconic songs in U.S. history. What was written as sarcasm has now become a national anthem of sorts, having been performed at sporting events and presidential inaugurations. Pride and belonging are echoed throughout the lyrics while addressing a broader issue, immigration. According to one report, estimates there are 281 international migrants in the world.
281 million international migrants.
281 millions.
While many cite different reasons for leaving their country of origin, the common theme is improving one's life. For people with a disability, what it boils down to is choosing life or death in many cases. Asylum isn't a luxury, and sadly, many of those who look for refuge are turned away, and those who stay have access to limited resources. In a large world, surely there's room for all of us. There's enough room for all of us.
And I definitely believe that's true. Just even from a biblical standpoint, one of the first things that you read in Genesis alone, it talks about that be fruitful and multiply, subdue the earth. And so I believe strongly that the world is made for all human beings to occupy.
We've subdued it.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you've ever driven cross country, ever had the opportunity, I drove across the U.S. with my older brother and my dad when I first got my driver's permit. We have so much space. Here in the US, there is so much wide open space. And it's just incredible to think that we have all these resources, here in the US at least. There's room. And so to think that there's not enough space for us, once we get to Mars, there'll be plenty of more space. So surely there's enough.
Excellent. And with that, we want to welcome the other Super Adaptables with us today. And as we call on you, say hello, your name, where you're calling from, your disability, and finally, what are your ancestral roots? And Harley, you could kick that off for us.
Hello, my name is Harley. I'm hailing in from Paris, Texas. I have been a C7 incomplete quadriplegic since my 19th birthday in 1994. So I'm about to celebrate my 30-year anniversary of life. As for ancestry, oh boy, where do I start? I've got family that's on the Oregon Trail roster. I've got family that's on the Mayflower roster. I'm a direct descendant of Rebecca Nurse from the Salem witch trials, Sir Walter Long from England. A lot of my ancestry goes back to England, Germany, some Scottish, a little bit of Irish, but mostly Germanic is the strongest one from both sides of my family.
Nice. Welcome. Luna.
Hello, I'm Luna. Currently I'm calling from Alabama. I will be headed back to Georgia soon. My ancestral roots are I'm Russian. I immigrated here when I was 11 years old. And my disability is caudal regression syndrome, which caused my lower half of my body to be underdeveloped. And during my during surgery when I was 13 years old, I was paralyzed from the waist down. So that's kind of the quick summary there.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Brandon.
Hello, my name is Brandon Patterson. I'm from Denver, Colorado. I am a C6, C7 complete quadriplegia since 2017 from a motor vehicle accident. My ancestral roots go pretty far as well. I've got Irish and I had a great great grandfather that was for the Confederate Army. So I've got a little bit of everything.
Excellent, excellent. Tahira.
Tahira Johnson here. I am a C4, C5 incomplete from 2007, and I am Black and Swedish, and also apparently a direct descendant from the Native Death March to Oklahoma. What they call what's the name we use? Trail of Tears.
Trail of Tears. Excellent, excellent. John, we can get your ancestral roots.
Oh, my ancestral roots. I think I'm also possibly related to Oceanus, the one child born on the Mayflower. I don't know. But otherwise, it's a lot of German, possibly some Scottish and some.
And I have roots tied to the Caribbean. My dad is from Kingston, Jamaica. Um, and on my mom's side, we have ties to the South, Virginia to be specific. And I've dated my family back to 1799. I know exactly what plantation we were in, or on rather. And yes, and that's wonderful to hear everybody's ancestry.com this evening. Is nice to know that there's just so much. And as you guys have read a little bit in the questions, as we talk about this land, is your land, this land is my land, the Woody Guthrie song. This is really going to be a conversation about immigration, not just here in the US, but also worldwide, and just the effects that it has on everybody. And it's going to be an interesting perspective, being that all of us are from different backgrounds, different walks of life. And so I'm just really excited to hear what you guys have to say. And for those who'll be tuning in and viewing it at some point on YouTube, drop something in the comment about your ancestry, where you come from, and maybe your thoughts on immigration and the reform and policies that can be changed to help smoothen out this situation. But let's just jump right in and get to question one. So it's natural to protect what's ours and what we perceive to be as ours. In one version of Guthrie's song, the lyrics state, "There was a big high wall there that tried to stop me. Sign was painted, it said private property." The implication is keeping someone out to protect what belongs to someone else. However, the lyrics following that say, "But on the backside, it didn't say nothing. The sign doesn't indicate a particular owner." So what does this say about opportunity and access, about goods, services, or healthcare, etc., being available to everyone? How does national possessiveness inadvertently affect our or others' lives? And of what effect does it have on the disability community?
Yeah, so when Corey and I were discussing this, I mean, there are several questions in there, right? But just to tackle the first one, if we, those of us who are citizens, who are on benefits, a lot of this stuff, access to healthcare and services, getting a driver's license, bank account, it's really easy for us to take that for granted. And it can be difficult to imagine, unless you're in that situation, of there being absolutely no way to access those things because of what's written on a piece of paper, in some city somewhere, by legislators. And we don't always end up where we end up by choice, or by circumstances that allow us alternative options. So kind of keeping that in mind, as this relates to people with disabilities, through More Than Walking and the peer mentoring that we've done, I've had the opportunity to meet, several people who've become quadriplegics after, emigrating to the US, both legally and illegally, and what's happened and the struggle that they've faced. And it's mind-boggling, having seen those examples of how difficult it is to just get the bare minimum. And this national possessiveness is, I don't think it does us much good, in terms of keeping things to ourselves versus sharing with others. But I don't know. That's just kind of my thoughts on it. But would like to hear your guys' thoughts. Tahira, let's start with you. Tahira, what do you think the idea of, this land not really belonging to someone or no one or everyone. What does that say about opportunity and access, to society's resources being available to everyone? Or
I guess,
um,
yeah, access to resources is not exactly equal to what people need. At the same time, it's been much worse in the past, but I think it gets better just kind of gradually over time. Um, but yeah, we certainly have some way to go as far as people really getting what they need. Um, National possessiveness. Is that
So in other words, like we in America, like if you go back to the lyrics of that song, this land is your land, this land is my land, right? We have this idea of kind of closing off people. In fact, when the first immigration laws were passed in the late 1790s, it was almost like only these people right here could be counted to be able to even immigrate after 2 years. And it was predominantly uh, people who were here due to indentured servitude. So there always has seemed to be this keep others out and limit the intake, right? So how does that inadvertently, when we look at it and we say it's our land, like the lyrics talk about a high wall being put up, a sign saying private property, that I don't want you here. I want to keep you away. How do you think it inadvertently affects people?
I mean, the notion of private property, I don't know, that's kind of basic. There's property that belongs to a certain person and they have dominion over that. But I guess a lot of people end up on the margins. And once you're sort of on the fringe, I mean, it's pretty hard to get back in or to get in at all, I guess. And the whole as far as like building a tall wall and stuff, I guess that's so like the political aspects, manipulation of it, sort of is used to divide people instead of kind of bringing people together and kind of a us versus them mentality that seems to appeal to quite a few people. So I mean, the effect is ultimately negative for a lot of people.
Mm.
And
then there's a
yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, I also sometimes my boss at work will say, you need money to be disabled. You need to have money in order to. So yeah, when you're disabled and you really don't have a lot of resources, it's definitely a lower quality of life than I think is necessary for many people.
Mm. I, I
yeah.
agree with that. What were you gonna say, John?
Oh, I was just gonna comment on like national possessiveness. You could also think of like nationalism, us versus them.
Yeah.
But also there's this dynamic of there's a difference between private property and, national property or like and a community, right? Like we're not encouraging us like to trespass private property or to remove personal boundaries, but there's a difference for when you're keeping someone out of what's yours versus keeping other people out of your collective yours, your collective community.
Kind of like making a comment. You don't belong here. And you're in the middle of like downtown, like Manhattan or something. You're like Midtown Manhattan. Somebody's like, you don't belong here. It's just like, this is a huge place. Like everyone belongs here. It's the melting pot. But Brandon, I would love to hear your feedback on that question.
So I agree with, I guess, Guthrie, period, because you said that song was written in the 1940s. That was 20 before segregation even ended. So personally, I think he was full of shit. I mean, it's easy to say this land is your land, this land is my land when it's a white guy that can walk around wherever he wants to. You know what I mean? At that point in time, nothing was for everybody. Everything was meant to keep somebody else down at that time in 1940s. You know what I mean? So now it's much different, but it's still a lot of the same when it comes to, again, these people can have this and the same people, in another position doesn't get the same thing. There's no national equality even when it comes to healthcare. You know what I mean? Each state has a different Medicaid system where some people get it way better and some people still have to fight tooth and nail for every little thing they get. So I still think there's a huge margin that can grow on.
And you know what? Just to piggyback something you said, in all fairness, to when he wrote it, those lyrics, that portion of the song is typically omitted from being recited, like in other places, for the
Which
simple
parts?
fact that he's actually saying it's for everybody. You know what I mean? Like it's just unpopular to think that America isn't for everybody when, we kind of advertise something different. But I just wanted to make that statement real quick.
Wait, which parts were omitted?
Like that part where he talks about building a wall up,
Oh,
that's the part that most people who are like patriotic they want to leave that part out. They don't actually want to address the fact that this is something
this was
that
a
was saying
protest song.
this is actually protesting against the idea that you want to keep people out. So he's actually on to something way ahead of time before like it became such a issue as we see it, today.
Awesome. And Luna, would like to hear what you have on this question.
Yeah, so I have actually had this discussion with my friends when I essentially take the spoons out of my day to educate and kind of have that discussion. And there are basically two main points. First of all, as somebody who's been through the immigration system, the egregious paywall that is required to legally enter the country is absolutely absurd between the fees for the applications and I mean, oh my goodness, the green card, and then finally the actual application for citizenship are all extremely expensive, and people who are trying to escape some kind of a situation and might not have that money are not able to enter this land of opportunity. I'm saying that with so much sarcasm, I can't even. The second point that I usually end up making is when it comes to benefits, we should not have our disability taken away just because we're capable of working. When you compare our expenses to an average able-bodied person, they are far higher because we have to pay for medications. And in my case, for example, I have a stage 3 bed sore, so I have to pay for that, for supplies for that, and all of it. So if I were capable of working, in my humble opinion, no matter how much I'm making, unless I'm like a multi-millionaire or something, I should not have my disability taken away from me, as it gives me the baseline and the foundation to pay for those medical expenses that otherwise most people don't have to pay for. So, and in cases when people can't work, my case currently, $630 is an egregiously low amount. I cannot live off of that. That's what I get a month. And I can't pay my rent. I can't pay any kind of bills. I am basically dependent on my friends who allow me to stay there for free or something like that. And housing applications and housing in general is extremely hard to get. So I'm just kind of currently stuck in that system, and I'm very much not feeling like this land is my land. I'm feeling it like it's able-bodied, frankly, white people's land.
Yeah,
Wow.
and that
No,
go
go
ahead,
ahead,
Corey.
John. No, go ahead.
I mean, that speaks to, when we welcome people into our community, when we share resources, we are investing in their ability to contribute. The idea that, disability benefits and all the things that we require as people living with disabilities, this is not just for us to consume and feed off of society, right? This is so that we can contribute, so that we can share from our experience, so we can have employment, grow families, give back to the community. And I think that's a really important thing that a lot of legislators, a lot of kind of other more, nationalistic focused people have lost sight of.
And, I think Luna speaks to an issue within the issue, right? If you're somebody, like when we talk about how does it inadvertently affect people? Well, if you have the disability and you're trying to come into the country and you already don't have a lot of financial resources, so then you pay into a system with the hope that you're going to be able to let in. And as you're paying into it, you have all of these legal fees that you have to pay. You have to be on like your best behavior. And then if you fail to reach the threshold on any of those things, all that money you have now put into a system that you thought you were going to be integrated into is lost as you get turned away. So it kind of like just funds this endless kind of circle. So I just thought about that. It's like it's kind of like what me and John and Harley, I'd like for you to jump in after this, but it's kind of like me and John were talking about this documentary called Ready for War and how people who are promised citizenship join the military in hopes that after they complete their service that they'll become citizens. But then if they commit a crime, a drug infraction, a
Misdemeanor.
assault case, or something to that effect, they get deported immediately, and then they fight to try to get back in because the crime doesn't necessarily fit the necessary consequences. But Harley, please answer one for us.
Goodness, I never understood how hard life was before my disability, and then becoming disabled and having my income immediately obliterated and being on a below poverty income for the rest of my life has been an absolute pain in my arse, pardon my language. But I currently make $934 a month. Federal guideline, or seems federal. I don't know if it is federal, but it seems like every state I go to has the same guidelines. Your rent cannot be more than 30% of your income. Well, okay, let's just get rid of the 34, go down to 900. That means my rental income is 300. Good luck of finding even a room for rent on that income. As for immigration, no problem. Luna, mad respect to you, girl. I didn't realize how expensive the process was, but I've always thought it's a beautiful thing. If you can come here legally, properly, more than welcome. After my accident, I became somewhat prejudiced, not against a specific race or nationality or anything, but just against illegals in general, because a friend of my father's was asking about me and my income and stuff. My dad and him were talking, and this couple came in, absolute illegal aliens, and never worked a day in their life here in the United States, and was given Social Security. Dude was making over $1,600 a month, and he never did anything for it. And here, someone who was born in this country, became disabled in this country, is making only maybe a third of that. And it's like, okay, I don't mind y'all coming here. I don't mind us, sharing and stuff, but do it right. So that way the ones that do live here aren't suffering and paying the consequences for your illegal actions. And it don't matter illegal, whether you're born here and all that, or if you're an immigrant. It's just, certain channels and certain things should be respected as a human being.
Luna has her hand up.
Oh, I also wanted to mention my pronouns are they, them. But I strongly disagree with that because I have seen a lot of people enter this country illegally, and a lot of times, like, I understand that they didn't really contribute to the system. At the same time, I also understand that they're coming from poverty, and they can't do the proper system because they don't have the thousands of dollars that it takes to get through the paywall to enter and get the citizenship, essentially. So I kind of understand frequently where they're coming from, essentially, by not going the legal route, simply because of how, again, I can't help but repeat paywall. The paywall is just so absurd that I understand why people who are poor to know it's just completely below poverty level, just like us, can't do the system properly anyway. So I just kind of can understand why they don't do it. Do I wish that people would also follow the same path that I did? Because I followed the legal path. My mom paid excuse me, a ton of money. And oh my goodness, my brain. Yeah, no, essentially I can empathize and sympathize with those people. At the same time, I definitely understand the frustration. And if we, I think that the focus, instead of, I don't know, not demonizing, but kind of those people, we should really kind of focus and push our representatives to fight for that system to be easier to navigate. So that's kind of where I'm at.
I respect you, Luna, for that. I didn't realize the costs are so high. Honestly, if the costs were lower, I would love to have more people come to this country correctly. And I understand both sides where they come here illegally because of the costs. And I thank you for opening my eyes to that. I did not realize the paywall was so big,
I mean, it's the paywall and also the time. Like currently on the U.S.-Mexico border, for example, the wait time to get in legally, I think is more, like it can be up to 6 years, or it's a matter of years. It's not months. So people who are trying to run away from desperate situations, whether they're in coming through Mexico from other countries, or international. I mean, all you have to do is look at the news, and I mean, the world is hell right now in so many places: Sudan, Haiti, Gaza, where else? I mean, Ukraine. Put your finger on a map. There's a war going on, and so we need to find a more efficient way, humanitarian way, to share our community with people. But let's move on to question two. Let's see, am I reading this, or you, Corey? I'll read it. The most dangerous route in the world for land migration is the US-Mexico border, according to the International Organization for Migration. In 2022, 686 deaths or disappearances have been attributed to this one place. And in total, 61,867 migrants have died worldwide. A sense of desperation is visible when people are willing to risk their lives in search of greener pastures. Unfortunately, society doesn't see it as such. Where is the compassion? What draws people to move across borders, and what do they hope to accomplish? How should non-immigrant citizens support them as hosts? So what do you think about that, Corey? Oh, you're on mute.
I think the compassion has slowly began to like erode because there is a competitiveness uh, between political ideologies and our idea of what we consider to be work and fair gain of wages. I can understand Luna's perspective on it, coming from immigrating from another country. And then I can understand Harley's perspective, being on the inside of the country and looking at goods and services and why is one maybe propped up more for someone uh, if I have been here first, but then the overall arching theme is that there is enough for all of us to partake in. It's just a matter of how we funnel everything in. So what it made me think about when it comes down to what draws people to move across borders and what do they hope to accomplish and how can we as non-immigrant citizens support them as hosts. I think about the Olympics. Now, the Olympics have had their moments of controversy in the 1968 Olympics to promote civil rights and what have you at the podium, to even taking a knee. But when you think about the Olympics, the goal is for all of these nations to come together on one accord, and that's to compete, right? And so America is kind of like has been that host country at times. Other countries have hosted the Olympics, and it draws people in. Nobody thinks about it as racism. You just are like supporting your country, and who's the best man or woman competing is going to be the victor. And everyone goes back home and does what they want. It draws in tons of money. It draws in tons of jobs and employment. And I think that's what we need to look at, what people are bringing to the table when they come to visit. Now, there are political arguments that the best and brightest aren't coming. But as we all spoke about in the beginning, all of us are from different backgrounds, and not one of us was here first, per se, albeit Tahira descends from Native Americans. But, it made me to really think about the Olympics. And I think if we had an openness to realize that there's a singular agenda, that I think we would all be a lot better. But Brandon, what's your take?
I'm kind of torn on this question, I guess, too, because in the grand scheme, I guess, yes, we have a lot that we can share with others around the world. War suck. At the same time, we've got way more that we need to be taking care of instead of everybody else's problems. I think, I'm not saying completely shut all borders and make sure nobody comes in kind of thing. Like that will never happen. That would never work. There's always going to be a way in. But again, when I'm used to getting before my accident, I was making almost what I get in a month, I was making in a week. You know what I mean? So, like Harley was saying, like we're living well below the poverty level as a disability community. I think at millions and millions and millions of dollars that we're sending, if that was put to clean up our own streets, to help our own people at home, I think that money is well more deserved here at home than it is for anybody else's problems. Does it suck for what's going on there? Yeah, I'm not trying to take anything away from anybody, but we as Americans need to worry about we as Americans. Ukraine's problem, that's Ukraine's problem. Russia's problems is Russia. That's their stuff. Right now, we have more suffering in our own backyards, and we're doing nothing about it. Absolutely nothing. We're perfectly okay looking at all these 10 cities in every city that there possibly is, and it's okay to just walk over somebody on the streets and not do anything about them. And to me, that is sickening. It hurts my heart to see that in our own streets that we do nothing about it.
Yeah, no, I think Brandon, you're speaking to the idea that the fundamental reason why, those of us who are in need, either living on the streets in our own cities, or those of us with disabilities, our argument for our own communities to invest in us is that we can do more with that, right? If you expand that same argument to the next city over, the next city over, the next country over, and you imagine that if we all adopted that perspective, it would end up being, global resource sharing, which is perfect scenario, right? But that's the basis of
it starts here at home, like you said, city to city, not country to.
Right. It starts here, and they're not necessarily mutually exclusive either. Like if you imagine, more people who get access to employment, that's more taxes, that's more money in the bank for the government to spend on benefits. And this idea of like, Corey, I love this idea of like, imagine the Olympics everywhere all the time. That's kind of what you're saying. What if we just invited if the world invited itself to kind of compete with itself everywhere all the time, the same way that we invest and invite us to compete with each other during the Olympics. I mean, interesting idea. Not exactly logistically how to pull it off all the time, but the principle is the important thing. Would love to hear from you.
I bet you would. I had a couple of things. One is that thank you, Luna, for telling us about those costs to come here. I was a practicing attorney in Chicago prior to my injury, but I've never worked in immigration law and did not realize how high the costs are. I just did an internet search now, but it's saying most people from Mexico to the U.S. will end up paying between $6,000 and $8,000 to get here. So no one poor can move here legally. And if you think about all the politicians that play on that and never mention the expense, I mean, it really tells you how, what a joke it is. And then it's all just about this leverage and encouraging racism and not bothering to mention that it's $7,000 per person, several $1,000s. Yeah, no one poor could ever move here. You have to be very middle class to move here legally. So that's pretty pathetic. I never went for that argument anyway, but that makes it even worse. I was curious. I receive SSDI and I work part-time. So I'm kind of concerned that some people are not allowed to work. I'm not sure how that works. Oh, yeah, did you want to say something about that?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention really fast. I am going to start losing benefits, or they're going to be decreased if I make more than $300 a month.
Yeah, different states some states don't have income limits. Some states do. They have different asset limits. That varies state by state. And then if you're working, you can do Medicaid buy-in, so you can still get access to things. But yeah, it differs state by state.
Right, that's true. I mean, Oklahoma is not great here for, really for people regarding disability. And there is a limit to, how much money I can make. So I work part-time, but I was just curious about that. And then SSI and SSDI are different. Yeah, as far as question 2, yeah, and I'm really wondering, I mean, between people who want to help immigrants and people who, want to keep people out, especially from certain countries, quite amazing to me that no one actually brings up the cost and just acts like people come in here illegally because they're criminals or they're just rude. And, they don't, so they're obviously coming here they're up to no good because they're not doing it legally, and nobody brings up the money aspect. It's
Not
really
a
it's really a joke.
Not at all. And that's kind of what a conversation like this is needed, because you're not going to hear that. Like, in between preparing for this, I watched so much news, read so many different articles, and one thing I find is that, in our two-party system in America, is one side is painted as being so liberal that it's like everybody come in regardless, and there's no paperwork trail. And then there's another side that argues it and says, hey, look how it's presented. But I thought, something was ironic. I was watching one network, and, they complain about, sanctuary cities and, um, you know, open border policies and, people on border towns and what goes on. Yet when they're filming different areas where they feel like fencing could be utilized or needed, they show exactly where you can go to come in. If you're trying to protect, why advertise it? If that's really what it boils down to. But that's not what it really is. I think systemically it's more of a issue, because immigration has been a problem since the inception of our country, period. But talking more broadly, other countries have had the same issue, where refugees have had to leave and flee places like Syria. What's going on between Israel and Palestine? And I wanted to touch on Brandon's point. Yeah, you do have to look at your home circumstances first, but it should show us more about what type of leaders are in office. Because if it really was about taking care of home first, you would divert the resources towards these things, right? But that kind of rarely happens, especially in a political season. So, I mean, this is a difficult topic to get around it. There's not too many like just surefire solutions.
Yeah, and let's see, who else has would love to hear, Harley, your thoughts on this question.
Well, thanks to Luna opening my eyes about the cost, and Tara even Googling the actual amount. It's like, oh my goodness, here I am, 48 years old, all my years in school, all my years after that, and working with people as a, independent living specialist and stuff, and social worker. And I've never have ever heard about the cost that it has to even become a legal citizen, through the proper channel. And I thank everyone for opening my eyes tonight, because now I have a greater understanding of why they come in the way they do. And I don't have a problem about that now that I understand the cost and stuff. I do have a problem for those that bring the drugs and the violence. Those are the only types of people I don't have a problem with. Other than that, I don't have a problem, as long as at the end of the day, if things go sideways, your gun is pointing the same way mine is. That's all I care about, as long as at the end of the day we can all, be on the same side, but respect each other's views. Because if it wasn't for different views, if it wasn't for individuals' uniqueness, then this world would be pretty boring.
Yeah, totally with you there, Harley. It's the diversity. That's what makes this country so amazing, is that we all come from different cultures. This is the only country on the planet with this level of diversity, this level of mixture of cultures. I mean, yeah, there's some in Europe, in the UK, and I mean, every country has its different levels. But I mean, this is what the US is supposed to be about. It hasn't always been that way. Hasn't always lived up to its ideal, obviously. But I just want to share real quick. There was a woman who came over to work as an engineer from India, and after graduating her first job as an engineer, a tree fell on her and she broke her neck. She was here on a work visa. Her work visa was going to expire because she could no longer work. She was going to be sent back home being like high level quadriplegic. I know India, you don't have much access. I mean, she would have had no future. It would have been extremely difficult. She had to get former President Trump to sign a law specific to her to allow her parents to get green cards and for her to get a green card so she could stay here. with her parents being her caregivers. She's now working as a professor at UConn. I mean, she's giving back, like she's doing wonderful things, but that level of exception that was necessary to allow this person to flourish despite what happened to her is just extreme. What happens if you don't have those connections? So that's what we're talking about. Like, where's the compassion? How can we make this easier? Brandon, would love to hear from you.
And Luna also has her hand up.
Oh, yeah.
I just wanted really quickly to piggyback off of that because the whole engineer thing and work visa, that is almost another, I don't know, another challenge because American immigration system has a bias toward people who have already proven to be successful. So if you aren't coming here to either work or whatever, they don't really want you here and they might deny your application. So you spent that money to apply and they're basically going to give you the middle finger anyway because you're not an engineer or you're not a doctor or you're not a professor. You're not coming here to work. You're not coming here to contribute. You're coming here to leech off of the society, which is ridiculous, of course. So that is almost another, like, not almost, that is another challenge for people coming in. So I just kind of wanted to, I don't know, add to that really fast.
Yeah, thanks for that. Brandon, would love to hear from you.
So what exactly is the next sentiment on that you were speaking on, I guess, is how can we make it better?
Let's see. Where is the compassion? What draws people across borders and what do they hope to accomplish? How should non-immigrant citizens support them as hosts?
Well, after this conversation, it is apparent that the entire system needs to be completely torn down, set on fire, pissed on, and then rebuilt. I have no problem saying it that way because it's beyond screwed up. But there has to be a level of control both sides, immigrants and the ones that are already here. Yeah, I was born here. My family was born here. My ex-family was born here, but I'm not from here either. I know that there's more resources out there that can be had for all involved completely. How that happens, I have no idea. That is above my pay grade. We need somebody in the power that is willing to look at both sides.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Corey.
No, I was saying, yeah, I think that's like fundamentally like the idea is to try to maybe amend some of the things that are so restrictive that they prevent, they're so restrictive that they create like a bit of logjam. I think one of the things that we didn't get a chance to address about it outside of the cost is the amount of just backlog that there is. There's a lot of paperwork in the processing issue, let alone the amount of time it takes for one to be on a pathway to citizenship. So there has to be, I think, a more simplistic way of filing, while at the same token, if somebody's leaving one land to the next and they forget a certain piece of paperwork, that alone can kick your application back. So maybe limiting the amount, but then on the other side of the argument, which, there are plenty of, especially what happened with the nursing student. I want to say she was from Alabama. This person had been here undocumented, entered the country illegally, but systematically it does work because the person was deported several times over. Now you can't control a person's relentlessness to try to come back into the country. Similarly, you can't. I think you do need some level of fencing and barrier, but you can't fence the whole entire any border off or any country. It doesn't have to just be the United States. It's just it's a worldwide issue that we have kind of insulated and created because of our desire to try to keep people out.
I mean, you're talking about the undocumented person who killed the nursing student.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's also important to speak to, there are so many acts of violence that happen amongst ourselves, citizens.
Yes.
Where do we get deported to? And there's a broader issue. So it's important not to paint immigrants as the only ones who are committing crimes.
And that's exact. And before we move on. And that's exactly true. I was just merely saying that that's kind of like what ends up happening is
Yeah.
that the focus becomes on these incidences that do occur, which
Single
I
example.
think they become driving forces and rallying calls for people's fears to keep people out. But I wanted to recognize that they do occur, but not at the rate in which we should say it's everybody. And it's just so overwhelmingly problematic that we have to do something more when it's not like that. But there are those things that do occur. Anybody else got anything they would like to add? Go ahead, Luna, quickly, so before we move on to question 3.
Yeah, just really fast. I just wanted to answer the question of what draws people across borders, and in my case specifically, it was healthcare because in Russia we are quite far behind, and I ended up coming here because Michelle Obama did a diplomatic trip to Russia, saw me, and essentially ended up expediting my visa. But
Wow.
essentially, yeah, it was to save my life because I was growing with my frog legs going like this, and I was in the widest wheelchair. And Russia kind of didn't really have anything that they could do about it. And when Michelle Obama found out about that, essentially, I was dragged across borders, technically against my will, to accomplish living a semi-normal life. Granted, now I'm completely disillusioned, but that's beside the point. And what do non-immigrant citizens support them as hosts? I do genuinely think that being able to come to a country and stay at someone's house, for example, for a couple months while I, as an immigrant, am able to establish myself in some kind of way, either it's housing or job or whatever, that is extremely important as a resource for an immigrant. But anyway, I'm going to shut up now.
No, thank you for that. I appreciate everyone feedback on that question. Yeah, I think you come from a very wholesome perspective because you see the gaps, you know it directly from your own personal experience. As we may know of somebody, I know for me, my dad coming from Jamaica, because he had someone to sponsor him. He ended up getting married. He worked. His time was lessened. So, you talked about that, particular skills or things that kind of like are a bias towards other people to help kind of expedite their ability to come in to the country, in and of itself is something that needs to be looked at. But there is a driving mechanism that brings people to travel abroad, and whether it's for opportunity, for family opportunity, for yourself. The whole point is when there's a promotion of come here because we believe that we can help you and that things can possibly be better for you, just to make good on those promises. Question 3, and I know that we just recently had somebody join us, but we'll get to her in a second. So when it comes to immigration, there is a major focus on the threat that those who are coming in undocumented pose to the society they're trying to enter. And the media and politics have been vilified. What are some common misconceptions about immigration? How have some of these reports shaped your view on immigration? Are there any suggestions you would make to legislators about improving the system? And Tahira, I'll let you take that.
Well, I just learned tonight my most common misconception was that the cost is prohibitive. So I kind of already answered this one for myself. But I also feel that the fact that that never even comes up makes me pretty wary about thinking that legislators will even improve the system. We're getting so little legitimate information. I don't know. I don't know how to turn that around when the whole matter is so it's brought to us so dishonestly. I'm not sure what could be done about that.
How do we get rid of the fear?
And there's a lot of fear in the US. And that's something I didn't realize until some years ago, that the level of fear we live in the US is really, really pretty heightened. So I don't, and that's played upon too. Yeah. And even, I mean, now thinking too that people just would never be able to afford to come over. And then you have people at the border drowning and shooting people trying to come over. I mean, I don't know. Your guess is better than mine.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to. I see again. It's almost as if unless you have personal experience, or first person observer experience, as in my case with immigration, it's really hard to get to what's really happening or to really understand what is happening. And I guess my thought is that, well, how do we fix this? And I really do think the disabled community holds all the answers, right? Because I think we are like, our community is the most vulnerable. We cost the most, right? Historically, we're seen as the most useless, the most draining. If we are worth investing in, if our argument is like, hey, help us pay for our caregivers so we can go to work and so we can do all these things. If we're worth investing, how much more potential do immigrants coming from war-torn Sudan, you know, like who do or don't have disability? If our argument is that our unique perspective of struggle and triumph can benefit society, then isn't that true for everyone else coming from wherever they may be and the experience that they've experienced, even if they're speaking a different language, even if they have a different religion, if they have a different culture, we have our own disabled culture that's extremely different, right? We're always complaining that we don't see ourselves in the films, and we all have our culture. So that's, I think, kind of the basis for an argument. Maybe that's how we can start turning it around. I don't know. It's a pretty idealistic thing, but Harley, would like to hear what you think about this question. How do we turn around the misconception? How do we get our legislators to improve the system?
Number one, educate them on what we just learned tonight, thanks to Luna and Tahira, speaking up. I mean, shoot, like I said earlier, I grew up here, never ever hearing about the cost of what it is to come here. I've never really had a problem. It is draining on the resources, unfortunately. And we have a hard enough time as people with disabilities gaining resources for ourselves. So if we're such a drain, then how is it that they are not? Personally, I agree with Brandon. Just burn it, urinate on it, start anew. That's an easy way to fix it. But I think number one is educate the people and educate people on how much it really does cost and how much of a stonewall immigrants really do come up against trying to come here correctly. I guess correctly is the only word I can say, but I mean, trying to go through the proper channels. I mean, they get stonewalled, that they can invest so much of their time, their money, their resources, and still get denied. I mean, I'm kind of at a loss. It's just, I've had my eyes open to so much tonight, and it's just, it's just mind blowing. It's just wow, and my only problem is, I don't live in fear of immigrants or anything like that. I am concerned about the drugs coming over, and that's about it.
Yeah, that's a that's a big driving force, which, because of cartels, at least, speaking from a US Mexican border issue, they're in the governments, they're in the police, they're in the lawmakers, which, if you're in a war-torn city or a town, what are you going to think about when you're trying to go to work and you're trying to live an exceptional life where you are, and the people who are in charge are, getting kickbacks from the very people that they have been sworn in to stop and protect the people from, and then that's causing mass migration movements. And then on top of those individuals who are in their own countries, there are people coming in from separate countries that have nothing to do with Mexico, and using that as a conduit of sorts to enter into the United States. You don't see it as much going the reversal. When we spoke about the 281 million migrants all across the world, typically you go from the United States to another country with a job in mind, a career move, or some sort of financial resources that you have been able to save up and move. But, I know of a woman who's been here since 2015. She is a tax paying citizen, her and her son, and go to work on time, does everything that they're supposed to do, and are still trying to get their paperwork through. and been here since 2015. It's like at what point? Like the average is the 5 years or the 6 years that they speak about. But realistically speaking, there are people here, 12 years plus, and they cannot get it done because of the log jam. So I wanted to touch basis on that as well. Ayana, I know that you just joined us, so if you could just tell us where you're calling in from, your disability, and if you could just answer question 3 real quick for us, that would be great. Ayana, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Very good. Sorry, I'm late. My time. Sorry. Um, I am Ayana, and I am calling in from New Orleans, Louisiana. I am a paraplegic. I've been in a wheelchair since I was 16 years old. Gunshot wound here in New Orleans, and I didn't get a chance to read the number 3.
So question
I'm
3
sorry. Let's
is,
see.
can you see it?
Immigration, focus on those who arrive. Some of the common misconceptions about immigration, how some of them wish they go off.
Oh, Ayana, you disappeared?
Yeah, she's, I think her camera or phone froze.
She logged off. I think, did anyone else not answer question 3 that wanted to? Brandon?
I did want to say, I'm sorry. For anyone who, when I work part-time for the state of Oklahoma, and I use DRS, the Department of Rehab Services. Some states call it something slightly different, but the organization to help people return to work. I would say, if you can even work part-time, that it would be worth signing up with the agency, with DRS, and just let them know how much money you can make and that it would make a big difference in your life to be able to do that. I think that would be worth it for anyone who, who's really struggling on a limited income. Kind of take a look at what they have to offer, and because they can help you go back to school, they can help you get a trade, just depending on what you can do. So I would recommend that for anyone because I think you can make something everywhere. Maybe it's not a lot, but it might make a difference. That was it.
Absolutely. The Bureau of Vocational Rehab Services, which every state has, which again operates on that philosophy that if you invest in with people who have disabilities, that's what it's for, get you back to work, that is going to benefit society. So they'll pay for you to adapt your car, they'll pay for caregiving while you're at school, they'll pay for your tuition. And so if that's something worthwhile doing, then who isn't worth investing in, right? But I think we're gonna close it up now.
May I?
Unless, yeah, go for it, Luna.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I feel like I've been talking nonstop, but I did want to contribute to the question number 3, the third question. I do genuinely think that much like most of the news, they focus on the negatives and constantly bring up, X person did this terrible thing, but don't really report on all the positive contributions that immigrants end up adding to American society. And that's kind of, I feel like, news and a news media issue in general. From my experience, because I'm an immigrant, obviously, like I said, and I have been in the immigrant community with other people also. And it just usually a lot of immigrants don't really want to do illegal stuff and don't typically do illegal stuff because they are afraid of their citizenship being taken away, for example, or, being deported. So while there are, of course, situations where people do terrible things, they're highly more reported. And like I say, not enough attention is being brought toward the positive influences. Those reports usually don't really shape a view on like immigration or immigrants because I just kind of critically assess media and try to see what is fear mongering, frankly, and what is not. And then finally, I'm just going to repeat what Brandon said. Are there any suggestions that would make legislation about improving the system? Burn it, destroy it, piss on it, just call it a day, build it back from the ground up, because this is absolutely absurd as somebody who's gone through the entire process. And again, paywalls, all of the restrictions, yada yada, as we already covered, should be much lower. And the access to entry should be much easier than what it is now, so that more people can enter the country legally and not take I don't know, basically not take advantage of the system. And kind of, I do still feel slightly insulted when people do in fact enter the country legally, even though I have all the compassion and all the sympathy for them, because at the end of the day I had to go through the legal system, and they kind of end up not going through it and getting benefits like Harley ended up saying earlier. So like, I understand the frustrations. I'm still more on the compassionate side, and I am just hoping that one day we will make the paywall kind of not disappear, but at least much lower, and the access to entry much easier, so that more people who need to come here are able to do so with a legal path. And that's
Can
kind of
I add something?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If the fact that the rest of us didn't even know it would be expensive to come to the US, that's not an accident. We're not being told things like that. And it's fear mongering is really what it is. And I don't even think burning it to the ground would do any good, because the whole system is just deceptive. And I don't think burning it to the ground would change people's personalities and their greed and selfishness, and their own agendas. I don't, I guess getting the information out there would be helpful. I mean, it made a big difference for the six of us to know. I don't know why people who are pro-immigration don't even bring that up. Well, it's actually really difficult if you don't have money. But also, it sounds like if you need several $1,000s each to come into the country, and then they're really looking for people like engineers and doctors, it's probably not costing us a lot of money if it's the people coming in that have to pay a lot of taxes when they get here. I don't think it's a drain. It doesn't sound like a drain to me. No, thank you.
Well, maybe burning the thing that we need to burn to the ground isn't the immigration system and the courts, the judges. We need to hire more judges. We need to hire more immigration officers that are maybe the thing we need to burn to the ground is our preconceptions, right? Our information, knowing that we're not being fed the truth. And that if we just look at immigrants the way we look at our neighbors and the way that we look at each other, here, maybe if we start from that perspective, then we can come to the right answers. And just one quick short story to illustrate that. I met a guy in Florida through peer mentoring. He had fallen asleep at the wheel because he was driving late hours. He came here undocumented. He hit a telephone pole, became high level quad on a ventilator. He cannot, he had to beg the hospital to get access to a ventilator upon his discharge so that he could survive. Like, what's his path to citizenship? If he gets deported, he dies. What's the path to citizenship for people who come here undocumented who have spinal cord injuries? What's our answer to that? Because the answer to that question is also the answer to everyone else. Who maybe they don't have a spinal cord injury, but any number of other circumstances. So looking, what are our priorities and what's our rationale for giving anyone on a ventilator access to education and those things? I think it's on that basis that we can look at other issues like immigration. But Corey, I'll hand it over to you.
Awesome. Listen, guys, this has been a great and healthy discussion. I like that we all were able to sit here and understand and listen to each other's points with regard to this subject, because, any other place you may go to it, whether it's dinner table, with family, friends, you may not be able to get your thoughts across because people are so tightly gripped on this issue. But I think one of the key points is trying to listen to what everyone has to say. And eventually you do have to come to some sort of consensus about it. And I think arriving at a particular consensus, the key is to fixing any problem is not to immediately start poking holes on it where there's failures, right? I think the point is that it's going to work for some and it's not going to work for some. And then that's when we try to slowly correct so that it can work for everybody quickly by taking a really, really deep look into some of the issues that are arising. But, something that Brandon alluded to earlier, it's easier to keep people out when you're not the minority. When you don't understand another person's plight, you may be more hesitant to see them be a part of the society or the world uh, that you're in. When it comes down to the situation with the fees, they are outrageous. And, by lessening them, maybe it needs to be on a case by case basis to see, okay, if you can afford to pay this, then this is what you should be charged with. If you can't, then it needs to be lesser in order to kind of like just speed it up and not let it be such a money grab. Um, in truth, we do have to take care of home before we can take care of others, but we just have to do it the right way. Yes, there needs to be some sort of protection for those who are in border towns. Ranches are being destroyed. Um, Vehicles are being destroyed. People are, being affected by some portions of mass migration. But the truth of it is, it's not as invasive as the entire country is making it to be. And we need to lessen the fear by exposing the truth as we burn, piss, and destroy these old ways, but rebuild anew by being completely transparent with our society. And our society means all of humanity, because this world was not built and created simply for Hispanic people to stay in one side, white people to stay over here, black people to stay over here, Asian people to stay here. It was built for us to all interact with one another, or otherwise it would be a very, very mundane and boring place to live. But, I wanted to just say this quickly. It's something that um, Luna has said, and it's just a short story of two people where sometimes it just seems like nobody really does win. I read a story about a young girl her and her family was undocumented, and she had cerebral palsy, and she had to get her gallbladder removed. And as soon as she was done getting her gallbladder removed, border agents were there. They separated her from her family so they can get ready to deport her. This little girl knows nothing more than America, right? And so, what are we telling people about that access to resources? Going back to question one. And then there was another woman who was born here. I think she might have cerebral palsy as well. Got an education, did everything she was supposed to do, but couldn't get a job due to her disability. So sometimes it just seems like systemically and systematically, it's just not fair. And I think that's one of the things we have to learn, how to make it fair and impartial, that we all thrive. But thank you guys so much for joining in this discussion. We look forward to seeing you, and be on the lookout for our next podcast discussion.
Thanks,
Stay
you guys,
tuned.
for all the information. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me
Well,
and being patient with how much I talked.
no worries. And stay tuned in and join us next month, and sign up for the More Than Walking newsletter at morethanwalking.com to learn more about the topic we will cover next.
Until then, remain encouraged, stay hopeful, and above all else, keep
Keep adapting.
adapting.
Have a great
Adapting.
night, everyone.
You
All right,
too.
take care.